Welcome to Your Business, Your Wealth. My name is Paul Adams, and I'm super excited because guess who's back? Corey Shepard is back on the show.
Never had this music. This is the first.
I've been working on stuff while you're gone. I've been increasing
working on your soundboards.
Our capacity, working on the soundboard. I even have a thing where I can bring it down nice and easy. Just let it fade off in the background. Leave us with just the listeners, some news articles, a bunch of facts.
Not even just regular butter. But honey,
and then a salty spread of my humor on top. So
the Malden salt of Paul's
it
humor.
is a little salty sometimes.
I don't know. Malden salt's from France. That's probably not the kind of salt that you use, but anyway.
Well,
I don't know why.
I should probably tell people what we're going to talk about today. I'm just
from Parks and Rec, you know.
Oh, who from? Oh, Ron. Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I wish he was a real person. I would try to be his best friend. I'd like him to just work in the Parks Department here in Lake Stevens. I think it would just be amazing to have a dude like, what was his last name, Ron?
Swanson,
not Burgundy. That was a different movie.
That's a different Ron.
Do you know how great it would be to just go down and have coffee with that dude that's like just trying to have the government not work well? I think it would be hilarious. Well, guys, we have a few fun articles for you today. We're going to give you a high-level view so you can kind of piece these together and kind of pick up the through line. Mm-hmm. We've got an article about a guy who was big in the financial independence, retire early, that's going back to work. And we're going to talk about why he was never actually retired anyway, and why he might have had to write the article for his audience. Not besmirching him. It's just you got to piece that narrative together so that it works for your audience. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how these 401ks that we've been told for years and years and years and years that what you should do first thing is put your money in tax deductible savings inside your 401k. And that's like the first thing you should do. Well, we've been saying that probably is not the first thing to do for 2 decades. I have been. And now we're starting to see the marketplace catch up to the math that was easy for everybody to do well in advance, but nobody did it. So we're going to cover that. And then last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the type of planning you can do as a freelancer or as a solopreneur to set aside a ton of money on either a tax-free or before tax basis, depending on your specific situation.
Corey, would that be called a gig economist?
Gig economist. I have not heard that before, but I
just made it up. I just made it. I guarantee it's going to be a thing.
Made it up. No, you didn't. That's what we wanted to name the episode. The Gig Economists talk about retirement plans. I think.
Well, a lot of solopreneurs are in the gig economy. They're doing the Uber, the one-offs, and they can participate in this kind of thing too with 1099 income. So it's the gig economy, and they are of it. So they're a gig economist. I don't know.
Hey, listen, if somebody's a listener of our show and they decide they want to write and they start a blog or they want to start a podcast that just talks about how to optimize gig economy jobs and they call it the Gig Economist, all I want is to be interviewed to help everybody. So for those of you that are going to take that idea and go run with it.
I guess they should take Paul's offer. Yeah.
Okay. I guess it is Corey's idea. Maybe you should give something to Corey. Well, now we'll get to work, everybody. I'm just excited to have Corey back. And I missed you. I missed you in these. And I've been hearing from our audience, and they really miss you too. But I want you to know, everybody who's listening who talked to me about this, I want you to know that I noticed. I noticed you being like, you would say like, oh, they're very polite. Corey, they're like, oh, you and Corey have such great energy together. You guys play off each other so well. And like, but I could tell that they're not saying anything about the episodes that I did by myself, like at all. And it's noticed. It's kind of like when you notice that everybody told you your first baby was cute, and then everybody else is like, that is a baby for sure. That's how you know. Nobody tells you have an ugly baby.
Now, yes. Wait, what did I look like before?
Yeah, that's what you don't want to hear at the high school reunion. Okay, sorry. Now I'll take us back on task.
Sam Dogan. He retired in 2012 at the age of 34 with a $3 million net worth. So he was like early in the FIRE movement, and he started a really popular blog, Financial Samurai. And I just want to be clear, like from my reading, what this guy did is something to be celebrated, to, live off of such a small amount of your income, to get to a place where you're completely financially independent at a really young age. Like that's amazing. I think my through line for this is a lot of people reading about the FIRE movement think something's going on that isn't, or it's something that it's not.
Yes.
And they get themselves twisted in a weird spot about what they should or shouldn't be doing.
Exactly right. And one of the things that we were talking about is you look at this gentleman's situation, and he retired early is how they put it. But as you guys know, if you've listened to the show very long, or if you're a client of the firm, that we don't like the word retirement. We don't think about the fact that literally until the 1930s, retirement wasn't really a word that we used to describe people. It was like in the 1800s, it'd be like, oh, you got to retire that old plow. We need to retire that old horse. Usually not good news for the horse. And you might say, I want to retire that old set of shoes or golf clubs or whatever. I'm going to retire to the den for the evening with my scotch. This is coffee. I don't want anybody to think I'm drinking scotch first thing in the morning from my God can. But the key is that we didn't use retired for people until about 1934, 35 with the advent of Social Security. And we started saying people can be retired now. We talk about it as building financial independence for the sake of having a work optional lifestyle. And this gentleman did that. He did it really well. And now what he realizes is he has a new lifestyle concern. So, Corey, talk a little bit about why he's going back.
Yeah, because he done had kids. This is never talked about in any of the FIRE blogs that I see. I mean, eventually Mr. Money Mustache got there, but most of the FIRE movement folks were 25-year-old tech workers in the Bay Area, just kind of living the bachelor or bachelorette life. Now he had kids, and he's like, wow, it's going to cost $1.4 million to pay for their college. I need to go back to work. Now, the fun thing that this article observes is that he didn't really ever retire, actually. Like, what did he wasn't going to a job, but, you know, post-COVID, a lot of us aren't like commuting to a job every day in the same way anymore. But he did start this major blog. I don't know how many blog posts. I haven't really read his blog over the years.
It's one of the most popular financial blogs out there, Financial Samurai. So he is, unless he's poor at running a business, Financial Samurai should be basically printing money for him.
And he wrote some books and consulted on startups. Like, he'd been busy. Well, and it's like Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week about 10, 15 years ago. That dude just never stops working. Like, I've listened to his podcast for a long time, read different blogs. Like, I could tell even when he had those businesses that were making him work optional, like he's traveling around the world, just working on all the things that he's working hard. But
I have a friend that was traveling with him during the 4-Hour Work Week.
There you go.
When it was published and everywhere. And they're like, he was the only guy of all the business people that were there that was constantly on his phone dealing with stuff.
Right.
But being able to build a life where you can be overseas doing something with a bunch of other business owners and work from your phone is an amazing accomplishment. There's no question.
Right.
But it's like it has to be larger than life and so cool and all of that for people to be attracted to it. And I think a lot of influencers go that way. And like in this case, one of his big things is I retired early at 34. Like, it's part of his bio. It's part of like the through line of the blog and everything else. So I think he just has to say he's going back to work because he's just going to have too many projects now to be able to keep telling his audience that I'm retired. Instead of being able to just say, and this is what we'd like all our clients to be able to say, is I'm now financially independent and have a work optional lifestyle. That's the aim, because it's really what he has is a work optional lifestyle. And if he held it that way, he wouldn't have to say, hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm going back to work because I got this concern for kids and college. And I just thought it was curious. He's estimating it could cost as much as $1.5 million to send both of his children, currently age 6 and 3, to college. And it's like,
it is altogether possible, like with the way that it's all
That's right.
inflating right now.
What is it you like to say? It's not a zero chance. It's a non-zero chance.
It's a non-zero chance that he's right. Yeah.
But here's the thing. What kind of college are these kids going to? You know what I mean? To spend that kind of money. Yeah. They're not going to the state school. They're not like, this is Ivy League level stuff. And I think if your aim is your kids are going to go to that kind of school, I think if you look at Dr. Thomas Stanley's work, and Corey, I don't know that you and I have ever dug into this, but his work that was more in his first book, the second book is Stop Acting Rich. First one was Millionaire Next Door, the first really big one, which, you know, our condolences to his family, died tragically in August of 2017 in a car accident. But that guy was an absolute gift. But one of the things he talked about is that millionaires often will buy homes for their children cash. So let's say you're worth $15 million and you're trying to help your kids out. So you buy them $1 million home. What they didn't realize, and what Dr. Thomas Stanley's research showed, is that by putting your children in an environment where a bunch of other people can afford that lifestyle, but they can't. So they try to now buy cars that are like the cars of the people in the neighborhood. Mm. They try to buy vacations and go on vacations similar to the people in the neighborhood. They go to the restaurants with people in the neighborhood, but they're not earning anywhere near as much as these people that they've now kind of been inserted around. And therefore, it pulls their consumption far higher than it would had they bought a $500,000 home for them. And I think some same things could happen, that if you've built your brand,
college, yeah.
And this is more like if he ever hears this episode, like, which, by the way, once again, like, huge accomplishment to be done at 34 for any period. To just take a year sabbatical at 34 is an amazing accomplishment. So nothing taken away from the accomplishment of it. But I would ask him to consider he may have built in some really financially responsible stuff, and you could be sending your children to a place where money doesn't work the same for somebody who maybe is being sent to the school where the parents are making $4 million a year.
Now that you're saying like that, it is kind of like in contrast to the FIRE movement philosophy. It's such this like grossly consumeristic piece to be spending that much money on that thing. Like he hasn't spent that percentage of his income on anything for his whole life. So maybe, I mean, he values education. Great. The thought that occurs to me, and we don't need to go super deep into this, is that with those ages, like, and that even the second that he had kids, I mean, I'm doing some of it now, but you could, with 18 years to move assets around and position, you could move yourself into a spot to like get them into Harvard and get zero tuition because of how you positioned assets and show no income with over that amount of time.
Miranda,
I feel like you could.
I'm watching the interview chat, and Corey just said something I think would be good for us to mention on the show. If you would just chat me when you get a chance, what is our college funding episode? We did one a while back, sending your money to college, I think is what we called it. I know we talked about it in the first book.
Well, the second that we redid it, and it's called Stop Wasting Your College Money, which I'd love to change the second one back to the original title because it just feels like such an easier one to share. So maybe we could do that, Miranda, in the
We'll at least have the link there. We might change the title, full disclosure, everybody. Yeah. But that's just is that we can unintentionally put our kids in an environment where the very values that you've been trying to instill in them, in this case, financial responsibility, might get thrown right out of the window with what they're doing. And nothing against it, but here's what really happened. He was living one kind of lifestyle. And he was living a lifestyle with two adults, no children, and being really frugal. It's a respectable lifestyle. And now what he wants to do is send his children to the same schools that the top 0.1% of people send to school. So it's just, to your point, it's a big consumption decision. But it's not that much different than if he said, I want to spend $1.5 million on a Bugatti Veyron in 12 years. That's a consumption decision too. And one is, well, I mean, one's, obviously more admirable. You're doing something for your children.
Right.
Don't take away from that, but it is a lifestyle decision. So,
now,
all right.
Here's what I really like about I think the thing that's so cool about the position he put himself in is going back to work. And this is the DFI dream that we have for all of our clients. He's going to do whatever the heck he wants to do because he doesn't have to support his whole lifestyle. He just has to make a little extra to add to school. So he says,
it's
he likes the idea of starting at the bottom, working his way up, being really excited about like growing something. And he's into the NBA. So he's like, maybe I'll just get in somewhere to the NBA. Maybe if he makes $30,000 a year, he's making a huge dent every year in what it's going to take to put money away for his kids. So
exactly really right. Yep. So again, we don't want to be retired. We want to be financially independent for the sake of a work optional lifestyle.
Yeah.
All right. Now back to Mr. Scott Burns. Are tax deferred retirement plans really worthwhile, Corey?
And here's the link to this FIRE movement question. If you want to be done working before 59 and a half, then the answer is to Scott's question is probably not. Almost certainly not. So we're going to talk about 401k plans and government retirement plans for the rest of the episode. And that's the link. Okay. You want to be financially independent really, really early. We got to think about asset location even more than asset allocation. Meaning it's not just the stocks and bonds or ETFs that you're in. It's what buckets are you putting them in to match up the lifestyle that you want to live and when you want to live it.
Indeed. And so what he's talking about in the article is that people have a choice. When you put money into a 401k, you can choose to go tax deferred. Now, the reason I say deferred and not deductible is if you put $10,000 in your 401k this year, you are deferring the tax on that chunk of money. And to defer something means it's going to come back later.
Right.
And with all my family from the country, with more hair on it, usually.
More hair. Like I pay some interest on my mortgage, and if it qualifies, I get to deduct that against my taxes. That's a tax deduction.
Yep.
That's not a deferral. So he spends a lot of time talking about ETFs and costs of mutual funds, which is a huge consideration for any bucket you might put money into. Now, specifically 403Bs can run into a issue where you get no match, you have no choice on where to put the money, and they have really high fees built in. So if 403B is a thing that you've seen on your statements, you got to read deep into some parts of this article about cost of funds.
Miranda just got us, Corey. Episode 149 is Stop Wasting Your Kids' College Money. If you want a different way to fund college, episode 149, it's on the podcast and on YouTube. But what we're just saying about 403Bs, what a lot of people don't know is school districts only approve of certain 403B vendors. And they put them through a due diligence. Now, that due diligence often costs these companies 5 figures. Like they might have to pay $20,000 so that their contract can get looked at again this year. Same one that was last year, by the way.
Yeah.
They pay $20,000 a year to get the due diligence done. And let me tell you, when we've seen many, not all, but many of the plans that have been sold into school districts, the fees are ungodly. And I'm talking like what you should be paying at a mutual fund level is maybe 26, 27 basis points. And we're seeing on the regular, the disclosed fees being over 1.5, almost 2 per year, allowing trading costs and other fees to stack on top of that in a way that's not immediately obvious. So if you have a teacher or an administrator that works for a school district that you care about who has a 403B, you can send them to us. Corey or I will meet with them for free to help them just understand the fees inside and then understand who's in their school district. Because by the way, we probably can't help them. Many of these school districts won't let in an outside advisor that's not with one of these companies. So you also have to be an advisor that works for one of these institutions to even get in the school district. I think you guys have a raw deal, and Corey and I are willing to help with that. So you just get a hold of us, info@sfgwa.com. Any of our clients, feel free to just immediately introduce us to any of your friends that are teachers. we for free will review that for them and get them in a different program, even though we probably cannot do their advice on their 403B. So with that, thanks, Corey. I didn't see any objection on your face.
Nope, not at all.
But I think one of the big things that people don't think about is he kind of makes the point that, like, well, maybe if you're in the highest tax bracket, now, maybe it'll work out okay because you're in this high tax bracket. But then I think about it. I'm like, wait a second. If I'm in the highest tax bracket now in my 40s, like, that's probably not the time to start deferring, given all of the things that whether you agree with it or not in the way our government's spending. Our government is spending, boy, a lot. And did you guys know, as you're listening, that when they price out things like the real cost of Social Security, the real cost of Medicare, the real cost of Medicaid, they only have to do 10-year projections. So, like, if you redo the net present value of the amount of money that we have to have in the bank just to promise our social programs, I don't know how taxes are not going up. I don't know how they can't go up. Tax revenues need to go higher. And
baby boomers and the over 65 population are the single largest growing population in our country right now. So no politician has any hope of getting elected. They also are the ones who are more likely to vote, right? Because they're retired, they're at home just watching, because it's a huge immediate impact in their lives. Mm-hmm. So lowering Social Security, very unlikely, I think, from a political standpoint, but raising taxes in other places.
Indeed. And so let's say we have clients like this. You're listening right now, and let's say you're 58 years old and you're making $1.3 million a year. You're just really hitting your power band in your business. Well, then it makes sense to set aside a lot of money pre-tax if you're hitting a power band because you're making over $1 million a year, but you're really planning on retiring on $200,000 or $300,000 a year. That's probably a really good time to go tax deductible. But if you're 45, here's the other problem you're having that both this article and the other article that I wanted to show people is even Dave Ramsey is now saying, like, hey, there's a big tax downside of these 401ks. We're trapping a bunch of money in to be taxed later because we're not just delaying the tax, we're delaying the calculation of said tax, which means it's going to be whatever the rates are when we take it out. A lot of people forget in the mid-1990s, there was a success tax.
Yeah.
That if you took out over a certain amount of money each year or you had too much money in your plan, you got to pay an extra 15%. And you know how I learned about that was a CPA friend of mine in Las Vegas who was a lot older than me when I started in the career. A lot older. I mean, I was like in my early 20s and he was like basically the age I am now, a lot older than I was then. Dude, everything hurts. Everything hurts. Like one side note. So I took like a week off working out when I went to Oregon with the family. I did a little runs on the beach, but that was it. I came back from that and I realized this the first time in almost 2.5 years that I wasn't sore from working out. So
maybe turn that back. Anyway.
Yeah. So this idea of I'm going to be in a lower tax rate when I retire is probably not likely if I'm making a lot of money in my 40s because I don't plan on making a lot less later unless I plan on retiring early. Oh, by the way, if you plan on retiring early, Corey, what's the date we can get our hands on that money?
59.5, unless you want to do some crazy esoteric 72T, which are like, you probably don't want to do that if you can help it. But we'll just leave it at that. So yeah, Burns, he had a point in the summary of his article, right? If your income is higher than Social Security wage base maximum, your tax deferred saving may work better than it does for 94% of all workers who earn less. Like if you're making that much money, you're already paying taxes on Social Security at the end. Like maybe it could work out, but not if you're say under 45 and want to retire before 60, because then that pre-tax, that deferred money, you can't get at in meaningful amounts until 59 and a half. And I would even say there's plenty of likelihood. Like you want to roll the dice, the taxes will be lower or higher. Like brackets won't have changed. They won't add that excise tax back. They won't add something. Like it's just a lot of control in the hands of the government. Oh, Indeed. And by the way, if you're making that much money, this $22,500 you're putting in this year, and whether that's taxed at 25% or 37% this year is like a freaking rounding error in your success anyway. So it's like, why are we obsessing this much over that? Like it's going to make very little difference one way or the other because it's such a small amount of money relative to your overall plan. Sorry, I've been all of this pent up excitement from not having been here.
I know. I like it. People like, you won't like me when I'm angry, like the Hulk says. It's like, I like Corey when he's a little angry.
I like it.
Not a lot, just spicy. I got one last thing to say on this because you reminded me of something, Corey. The other thing that you don't think about is if I'm going to use 20,000 as a round number. If I'm a 35% tax bracket and I put 20,000 in, I know right now 7,000 of that money belongs to the IRS. It's just a matter of time until they get their chunk. Now, the chunk could go higher if taxes go up. It could go lower if taxes go down. But right now, I got 20 grand in the plan and I have a partner. In fact, on day one of 35% tax bracket, day one, he has 45%, my partner. Or they. That's probably a good use of a pronoun. They. Right. They at the IRS don't have, they actually just don't even care, but they're now my partner. So it's a little bit like going on the plane and having to share the armrest with somebody. You don't get the whole armrest. You only get 13,000 of it. The other 7,000 is the IRS. But if it was Roth 401k, all the 20,000 is mine. So I'm already saving more for retirement because 100% of what's in that Roth 401k is mine. And if you look at a regular 401k, I remember when I was in my 20s, I first had over $100,000 in my 401k, Corey. I was like, man, that feels good. And it took me, I teach this to people, and it took me like a minute to go back to the statement, look at it. I said, nope, it's like 65 grand of mine.
You know, even this Scott Burns, he does say, he observes, like, if you make the if you make the pre-tax contribution, you would have more money in your paycheck, or if you put it into the Roth, you have less, which is not actually true. Because if you're doing a full apples to apples, it would be the same amount either way. You'd either, like with the Roth, when you're putting the full match, the max in, you're just putting more money away.
That's right.
For you than you did before.
Because if in my example, I could put 13,000 in Roth or 20 in the 401k, but I'm wanting to put the extra 7,000 in the Roth,
right?
Which means it's all mine. Which means I actually got $20,000 a year into a tax exempt environment instead of 20,000, of which 13,000 is mine in a tax deferred environment. It's very different. Okay, very different. Corey, bring us home with this last one.
One quick one.
So, my stories cost us a bunch of time.
So this is why I joke about the gig economist, but if you're generating 1099 income, you have some options to put some money away that other folks don't. So this article is focusing on a solo K plan, which we also have really preferred over some other options in the past because it was the only way as a solopreneur that you could get money into Roth, because you could pick a Roth option on your solo K plan. You're building your own plan, just like your employer was building their 401k. So you can do that, and it may be a good option. But the Secure 2.0 Act that Biden just passed is opening up the provision to allow Roth in a SEP IRA. Now, there's a lot of nuances between the two that we don't have time to go into now. But I think that the thing that might be notable for everyone who are right up to the limit on tax time right now is if you're trying to do this fast, you probably can get a SEP done faster than a solo K, at least just in our experience. Like it's just a lot smoother, a lot less paperwork and regulation. So if you're trying to get that money in, now you can't do a Roth today. Biden put that law into place, but it doesn't start until January of next year. So it's a pre-tax contribution, but you can put it in right now, convert it to your new Roth next year when that opens up, and get to the same place if things don't change that much in this next year. Now, by the time this comes out, we'll be past April 18th. So depending on the accounts that you're trying to put money into, you may be too late. There always is next year.
Solopreneur or a gig economist and you haven't done your tax return yet, we may, depending on your situation, have until September 15th to fund those. But I think the big thing I would want most of our audience to leave from this one is that I think that Well, we have some clients that are making well beyond top 1% income, 600, 700,000, over $1 million a year as solopreneur consultants. And super highly specialized, incredibly intelligent people. And they have managed to make an amazing living with what's between their ears, basically. Their brain is just on a whole new level. Well, they've got the ability to use these programs to set aside way more money than what you can do in a typical company 401k. And so if you're one of those people that's really making some great income, but people keep telling you, well, you don't have a business, you don't have this, there's certain tax advantages you can't do. And that's true. But from a retirement savings perspective, somebody making top 1%, that is their own, like it's theirs, it stands alone, and they've got whatever customers they have or how they work. It is one of our most open fields of play when it comes to getting really good at controlling that tax bill and accumulating capital for old age. So I just want everybody to be able to keep that in mind. Corey, welcome back.
Cool. This is fun. Thank you. It's good. Yep. So feels good to be back.
For those of you that this might be your first episode tuning in on, the reason Corey was gone is he has a new baby. Second new baby. He had a new baby before. This is the newer model.
New baby.
Yeah. New baby. Yeah. Ordered it. They take forever to manufacture, like 9 months. You know, a lot of, I hear at least for many families, customer service is a little rough during the 9 months. You know, you got mood swings, etc. You got a scared dad in the house. Like customer service gets bad, but then after the baby's there, everybody's happy again. It's great. All right, guys. Great. Well, I know Corey thinks this, for sure I do. Miranda is back in the background making sure that we got a good piece of content edited to land out with you guys. We got Kwame and Jackie in the back, and Jeff, who you guys got to see over the last few weeks. From every single one of them and from me, we hope that this episode has been a contribution to you being able to design and build a good life.